And we are live. What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday, so you know that means it's time for First Row Intersation. I'd like to welcome you all to the first row. Quick to jump in tonight because we got a lot of ground to cover and not a lot of time to cover it. So I want to start off. Tonight's show is going to be, or tonight's topic is going to be never give up. I have my good friend, my brother, my fam, my boy, Key Bryant. I'm sorry, I'm going to call you Key Bryant because that's what I call you. But he goes by Key. Yeah. Key Bryant on with us tonight. So if you could say hello to the people, please, Key.
What's up, everybody? Thank you all for tuning in today. It's going to be a good word for you. So we appreciate you all tuning in. And any comments you have, please make sure to tap in.
All right. So we're going to jump in pretty hot today. So for those who are new to Intersations, I think I was doing a count today. I think this is like the 13th show or the 14th show. I can't remember, but the 13th or 14th Intersation today, but it's still relatively a new topic. Or a new concept. So I want to share what Intersation is. What Intersation is it's a combination of when interview meets conversation. When you combine those two together, you get Intersation. In my life, I'm very fortunate to have an abundance of people that surround me, whether friends, co-workers, family, sons, nieces, grandchildren, or not grandchildren, godchildren, I ain't that old, that I get to have an abundance of conversation with. And in having those conversations, many times they go beyond the surface level into deeper, more meaningful conversation. And so what Intersation is a way for me to open up a literal lens into those conversations so that people can experience some of the growth that I experienced from those conversations. As far as tonight, you will see Key and I going back and forth on the video. However, this is an open conversation, so feel free to engage in the chat. Feel free to engage in the comments. Feel free to engage and ask questions or add nuggets to the conversations. That's why it's Intersations. It's also inclusive of those who are watching live. Other than that, I really am looking forward to this topic. Key and I have actually been kind of like rolling around with this topic for a couple of weeks now. So I'm happy to see it come into fruition. I'm happy to see what he has to bring to the table. And I'm happy to take notes. Now that I look down, I don't have a pen, but I got a pen always nearby. Boom. So now I got a pen and I'm ready to take notes. So with that, I want to give my guest, Key Bryant, an opportunity to please take a moment and introduce yourself to the people.
What's up, everybody? So like Rose said, Key Bryant, but I go by Key. It keeps it short for everybody, nice and easy. But and also the key to your real estate dreams and investments. So with that, basically, I do real estate. Have been doing real estate business for the past, actually, it's been going on for 13 years, been in the industry. And my wife and I started our own brokerage back in 2010. So we're at 8 years going on nine in January. So definitely, love the business, love serving people. I came here on Intersations today. Well, first and foremost, to be here with Billy. We always have great conversations with amazing dialogue and always to go back and reflect with one another. But just having this open dialogue with you guys, just to bring a different perspective, maybe something that's refreshing for everyone to hear, especially about this topic of never giving up. So, definitely looking forward to this evening.
All right. Well, I'm always looking forward to having a conversation. Like Key said, we've had many conversations. And just a sidebar, it's funny because Key and I have known each other since we were in our teenage years. And it wasn't until we were well into our adult years that we found out that we were both heavily into growth and self-development and learning and reading literature that was going to expand our minds and expand our intellect and also expand our borders, our intellectual borders. So I'm just grateful to see, like, out of all these conversations that we've had, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to sit with you and talk in front of a live audience while they're able to see not only how we engage as brothers who lift each other up, but they're able to see that everybody has a story and there's power in everybody's story. So I'm looking forward to it. So enough with the chit chat. I want to start off with my very first question. If you've watched an Intersation before, you know exactly what it is. First question coming out of the gate is, What does the topic never give up mean to you, Key?
Basically what it means to me is, just to keep striving, working hard, regardless of the obstacle or barriers that may come up in your pursuit of achieving that goal. I mean, just having the tenacity, the resiliency to keep moving forward. And that's in every aspect of life, not just professionally, but dealing with relationships, whether it's friendships or, marriage, whatever the case may be. Whatever you're striving for in life, just keep going.
Just kidding.
Oh,
My
okay.
mic was muted. My bad. I was turning a piece of paper. Striving is definitely something in what I would consider a characteristic of never giving up. When I was thinking about the topic and when we were kind of playing which topic we wanted to approach, which I'm assuming is going to be the first of many intersations, what the topic of never giving up to me meant was it was a balance, because I think sometimes never giving up and never quitting can be to your detriment, like never knowing when you should stop, never knowing when you should cease. So I kind of went to the other realm of like being argumentative and being negative and being in those dark places, and realizing that sometimes having a never give up attitude is not to your benefit. However, in other areas, when you're pushing to grow and it may be uncomfortable and it may seem like it's taking forever to grow or to manifest, that never give up mentality is what pushes you, even when you don't think you have anything left. So I mean, Key, I know you work out. I don't work out like you work out, but I work out a little bit. So it's like when you're under that bar and you feel like you don't have another set underneath to push the bar up, but you push it anyway. And that's really just will and grit that you're using to push that up. It's not that you're not as tired as the next person. So that's what never giving up really meant and reflected or resonated with me. And so I'm really, like I said, I'm looking forward to having this conversation about never giving up, because I think that there's a lot of areas that you can shed light on. And the last thing I wanted to say about never giving up is that, because I know you personally, I know some of your struggles. I don't know all of your struggles, but I know some of your struggles. And it's sometimes easy to see people in successful positions, or what you perceive to be successful positions, and assume that it comes easy to them and assume that they don't have to work for it. But I'm pretty sure after tonight's conversation, you're going to have a different perspective on that from
absolutely. Absolutely. That's for sure.
So that's the end of the easy questions. I hope you're ready for rapid fire. So my second question that I'd like to ask you tonight, and really my first question, is how do you apply this mindset of never give up today, like in your personal life? How do you apply it?
Well, I mean, I think it's in every area. I mean, it's applying it is this thought or this process that, if I'm talking about on professionally, right, and not giving up, I have a family I have to take care of. So the option of giving up and letting go is, there's kind of no option of that, right? I mean, just because of the standard that I've set, is that, hey, I'm gonna keep going. I gotta keep, regardless of what's happening, I have to make sure that I'm pushing forward for the sake of my family. Not only that, but financially, and also because people depend on me. There's a service that I provide, and people depend on that good quality service, right? So those are kind of like those three areas that keep that mindset set, where it's okay, I have to continue to keep pushing forward, and not giving up. But so far as applying it and applying that mindset, I mean, it's something I wake up and I have to start over every day. It's not something where, it's just automatically in me. It's something that, okay, you wake up and you got to do it all over again. It may feel like Groundhog Day, but it's something where it's like, hey, this is something that it's a routine that you have to follow, something that you have to continue to push forward doing.
Okay. I think that's important that you shed light on that, because So with doing Intersation and creating content, it is something that becomes easier because of repetition and practice. However, it is something that I have to do regularly. I don't have to do it every day. I typically engage with Intersation content every day. But it's something that I have to basically reinvest in every single day, or every moment I get in front of a note, or every time I get an Evernote, or every time I'm, looking at videos, every time I'm looking at things to buy to help with the video quality. All those things I'm reinvesting in every day. So I think it's very important that you're saying that never give up mindset, how you apply it is every single day it resets and you have to recommit to it. I think that is crucial and critical. I would ask you if you could dive a little more into that never give up mindset when it comes to your family. If you could kind of shed light on the dynamic of your family, like size and stuff like that, and then how that never give up mentality also applies, or that mindset applies to them as well.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have my beautiful wife Sarah and 3 children, and one of those kids is 16 years old. So that means college is right around the corner. I mean, if we talk about finances and things of that sort, if she doesn't get a scholarship, that means it's got to come out of daddy's wallet. So that's part of something there. And then of course I have my 5-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. So 5-year-old boy, 2-year-old girl. And that dynamic of never giving up is also, to show my children an example of what it is for someone that is continuing to be ambitious, continuing to drive forward in life, and never giving up, even when those moments are very tough. There are times that we can be in a situation where things don't look too great, and how is daddy going to respond to this? Is he gonna tuck his tail and just say, hey, I give up? Or is daddy going to get back out there, grind, do what he has to do, and continue to move forward and be the basically the cornerstone of the family to make sure things are going well? And then it's also a matter of, hey, like you stated earlier, when is the right time to give up on certain items or certain things, right? So if there is something that, hey, I'm striving to do this, but it's starting to hurt the family, meaning rather if it hurts the family financially, rather it hurts the family so far as me not having time with the family, then that's something I have to reflect on and say, okay, look, this is something I might have to put to the side because now my family is being affected by this. And I mean, I can go across the board on a lot of items or a lot of things. Is it affecting me negatively as a person? So yeah, that's kind of where I will apply that mindset with family.
It sounds like it's almost like that mindset applies in a very simplistic state of what type of example do you want to be. And I think that's what you just said, and I'm just trying to simplify it to the best of my ability. Is what type of example do I want to be to my children? What type of example do I want to be of positive things to them, of negative things to them, and being able to know when to step back or when to step forward in the things of life. I think that's really powerful, because when it comes to your children, they're watching everything that you do, and we may think they're not learning behaviors from us, but they absolutely are. I think with Z, one of the things that he told me was I told him a long time ago a couple things, but I told him one thing was, the difference between a boy and a man. The difference between a boy and a man is that a boy doesn't do based on how he feels, but a man does in spite of how he feels. And one day we were having a casual conversation. He's like, yeah, I was thinking about that definition. And this is years later, that definition of manhood, Dad. And, I remember what you told me. And it was like, wow, you were listening to that. And so just like they can be listening to what you're saying, they're always observing what you're doing. And so that if you're a quitter and you're giving up, you're giving them permission to be that quitter and give up. Well, my dad quit, my mom quit, everybody else is quitting. So why do I need to go forward if that's the only example that's been set? So that is critical. The next question I want to ask you is, for yourself, at what age did you realize the importance of never giving up, the importance of having grit, or I think it's tenacity, to pursue the things that you wanted?
Oh man, that came at a very young age, only because of And I would say that it wasn't just the fact of learning it, but it was the example that was put in front of me. So when we talk about, your parents and the examples that they have, um, growing up, we weren't in the best situation. So there's been times we were evicted from homes, didn't have places to stay, things of that sort, but never saw it in my mother's eyes of giving up. She kept pushing, no matter what the situation was, no matter where we were staying, rather if we were staying in the car or hotel, whatever the case may be, she never gave up. And she kept pushing and always kept us in a situation that we felt like, hey, we were in the best situation. Hey, if we were staying in a hotel, this was the best hotel. You know what I mean? It was like, no matter what it was, she always made the best of the situation. And we never really felt like we lacked for anything. Now, as I got older, of course, I could start understanding that the situation we were in. But overall, it was like not that many complaints. Right. It was just kind of like, mom's just made sure that she kept pushing forward, kept pushing through. And that was the first lesson that I've ever learned from her. I mean, looking to like back then and now looking now in my life and my mother's life, my family's life, we're all doing great. We're all doing fine. So it was like, for her to give up at that moment would have been a detriment to us. Right.
Right.
And obviously everything turned out to be okay. So because of that, I mean, that was always a great example for me to fall back on. Right. But even still at that young age, I can go back to football. I mean, there's been many times where I would play, on the football field and someone might light up my bell. And I was like, woo, I don't know if I want to play anymore. Right. Like, I was like, I thought it was good, but the dude just hit me real hard. Like,
for real, for real.
Yeah, for real, for real. So, but it was like, nah, let's keep going. And because of that, I continue to get better, learn how to not get, to avoid certain hits. Cause I during the time I used to play receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was like, okay, on defense, then you deliver the hit. You're going to come in full throttle. Don't come in, with half effort, because when you come in half effort, you end up getting injured or it hurts more. Right. So, it's just certain things of learning how to understand that, okay, if I continue to strive forward, it can get better. However, I've also learned when there was times that I had to give up, when it wasn't worth the effort. And, I don't know if we're going to go into that a little bit later, but there's been times in my life that I've absolutely had to learn to not be tenacious or hold on to something that wasn't beneficial.
Yeah, we will get into that a little more, but I do actually want to back up because there's a couple of things. Number one, Black Heights, which is Antoine Wade, Mr. Antoine Wade himself, said, "Never give up. Never giving up is also the willingness to accept failure, to learn new skills, to grow and adapt." I agree with that comment, and we're going to kind of probably touch base on that a little bit later. But one of the things you said was being in that hotel with your mom, and you guys are just like, hey, it's the best hotel ever. You're not seeing probably the internal workings of your mother's mind of trying to, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure out where we're going to stay next? You're not seeing that. And so what I would ask you is how much do you think panic plays a part in the mindset of never giving up?
Whew, panic, man. So that's panic is huge, because I mean I've been there, just personally, but there's two things that panic can do. Number one, it can stifle you, meaning you don't do anything. And another thing panic can do, it can make you respond, or let's say react, to the situation too quickly, meaning you haven't really thought it through. And in those two situations, I would say you kind of have to calm down first before you actually make a decision or have action, because that panic is more of it's an emotion of desperation.
Right.
And in that moment of desperation, I feel that majority of the time you're not going to react the right way. Um, a situation that I was in where I felt kind of a panic, I found out if I had just kind of meditated, meaning step aside, again, reflect on certain previous experiences, and kind of just let my mind die down. Let the thoughts, because in that panic mode, you have all these thoughts that are happening, right? And they're coming full throttle. You almost can't control them in a sense. And if you could just slow things down, slow your heart rate down, breathe a little bit, I found that you start that feeling of panic kind of,
Subside a little bit.
yeah, a little bit there, and then it allows you to think, more rationally. Um, but yeah, I mean, panic is it's a real emotion, and if we're talking about actual danger, that's a different situation. But if we're talking about something that's not imminent danger, then I think it's a way that you should respond to it as opposed to react.
Yeah, I agree with that because I mean, obviously, if your life is in jeopardy, you don't have time to say, "Okay, let me calm down and go into a place of zen while they're
Mhm.
shooting at you." It's like, no, let me get on the ground and try to avoid some bullets, and then we can start thinking about what the plan is
Right,
to get out of
right.
this situation. So I agree. There is that ability to kind of pull back and get into that tranquil mindset. I think on one of the intersations I did with Moses Jenkins, we were talking, and he said, his mother taught him, wait 3 days. On that first day, you're going to be at the peak of emotion, peak of hype, peak of your hype and your panic. Really, that's what it is. And then you're going to kind of on the second day, you're going to still want to make that choice. But then by the end of that day, you kind of like almost reached depression out of the choice. Like, okay, I'm not as excited as I was. And by that third day, you've kind of balanced out to where you can effectively, going back to what Antoine said, you can effectively look at, okay, is this something I need to walk away from, and quitting it or giving up is in my best interest? Or are there skills and tools and knowledge that I have yet to pursue that would enable me to overcome and continue to press forward and keep that never give up mindset? So I agree exactly with what you're saying. And he actually asked you for some examples to share, but I'm following up with him because I'm not sure what point he was asking for those examples, but I want to make sure we get to that question as well. I want to continue to welcome those who are coming in to the video as well. Appreciate you guys joining us live. Feel free to jump into the chat and contribute at any point. I guess kind of continuing down that pathway of when you found out it was important. Who were the people who kind of, I think your mother, if I'm kind of assuming, but I'm thinking that your mother was maybe one of those people that helped instill that never give up mindset in you. But what other mentors did you have that kind of instilled that don't give up and really a mentality that says you can do it?
Man, there's the list is plenty. We can go from my mother to a lot of football coaches. Obviously, Monty Maxwell was one. Uh, Coach Starks was another coach. And then, in the ministry, there was definitely, Pastor Godot, Pastor Crandall. Pastor Crandall was very effective on teaching me. Actually, he was trying to show me ways of going the other direction, meaning, yeah, you never give up, but it means that you can give up on this aspect so you can continue forward on what it is that you actually want to pursue. Which is one thing I've probably never forgotten from him, but he's actually shown me some things where it says, hey, look, just because you're in this situation doesn't mean that, you have to stop pursuing where you want to go. And case in point, just to give an example, I had my 16-year-old daughter at the age of, I was 18 years old. And I was in college during the time and trying to pursue, football and, get into a D1 college. I was at Sierra College at the time, and got her mother pregnant. And my decision at that time, my thought process was, hey, look, I made this bed. I have to lay in it. Not only that, but, I feel that I love her mother. And because she's pregnant, what I'm going to do is I'm just get a full-time job, quit college, right? And, and provide for this baby. And that was my number one priority. And at the same time, I had multiple mentors during that time that were telling me to do, either the same thing, but Pastor Crandall, on the other hand, actually had some different advice. And what he was saying was, hey, you can continue to pursue your football career in college and still take care of your child. You don't have to go and get married and quit and so forth. I didn't take the advice at the time, but now looking back at it, I mean, it was probably some good advice at that time. Just trying to show and teach me that just because, a certain situation comes in doesn't mean that you necessarily have to quit that overall path, right? But you can, kind of alter it and change it up a little bit. So, yeah, those were the main mentors, in my life at that time. And a little bit later in my life, probably when I was a teenager, my brother-in-law, Sean, was definitely he was probably the first male role model that I would see on a continuous basis. Meaning, I used to live with him, and he would show me what the example was of being a husband and being a father. And so he was very vital to my upbringing.
All right. I think that actually answered Antoine's question, because he was asking for examples of which of letting go because it's not worth it. And so it seems like you actually were given advice to not let go, and you chose to let go. And in hindsight, hindsight is 2020. They say you were like, maybe that was the best advice in the situation, but I went a different route. And I think that our paths naturally as humans, our paths through life evolve as we go through, because we get experiences, we feel pain, we feel love, we feel happiness, we feel joy, we feel sadness, we feel all these different emotions that kind of change our perspective on what our path may be. One of the things I knew at a very early age was I was like, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to not necessarily be famous, but I want to be wealthy and well off. Well, I haven't achieved that yet, so I'm still working towards it. But as I've experienced things, the get rich quick schemes, and I don't want to call them schemes because some things you can get rich quick if you put the work in, but the get rich quick ideas and all these different things that may come up, they skewed my perspective of my path. And there were opportunities that I walked away from thinking like, well, I could go over here and make this money fast. Fortunately, those were legitimate opportunities to make money fast. So I didn't end up like incarcerated because of, going with the quick street hustle that I see.
Right.
Somebody come back to the house. They left the house with a couple of products and they come back to the house with like $600, not necessarily in my household, but you see that happen. And it's like, well, maybe I want to go and do the $600 a day campaign to reach this goal. So I think it's very important that we recognize that our paths do evolve over our experiences as we experience life. And with that, I want to ask you my next question is for you, because it seems like you gave up in that moment on your dream of college and football and those things. So at what point, or not what point, but there was a point that you decided to give up on those things. And what do you think, in your opinion, causes people, for yourself, you can speak from your own opinion or your own experience, but what do you feel makes or causes people to give up on their dreams? I'm not talking about the ones that are negative dreams. Like, I'm just talking about the dreams that they really want to pursue and they really want to achieve.
Well, I think that fear, a lack of love, which I kind of think those two things correlate, and I'll probably get into that a little bit deeper. And also a non-compelling why, or a small why. And what I mean by why, I mean like, what are your reasoning? What is your big why for doing or wanting to do what you want to do in life? So one thing I feel about fear, kind of feel that for the most part, you have two ways of responding to life in general, meaning rather if you're speaking with someone or you're in love with somebody or whatever the case may be, there's two things that you're going to respond with. You're going to either respond with fear or you're going to respond with love. And those are the two, I think, two emotions that probably have the most power or the strongest when you feel them, right? So fear, it can make you do irrational things. It can make you do productive things, right? So if you're saying like, oh, I have a fear that, this is going to go wrong if I don't do A, B, and C, then it can propel you to make sure that you're doing those items, right? And then also it can make you fearful to where you choose to lie, you choose to be deceitful, you're afraid of those consequences. So now you're doing negative things, right? I also think love has it's almost like the opposite in this sense. Love allows you to say, hey, you know what, in this type of situation, um, because I love this, what it is I'm doing, then I'm going to have integrity. I'm going to do this the right way because I'm going to respond out of love as opposed to responding out of fear. Right. So I kind of feel that those two emotions go hand in hand. I think they're just two powerful emotions that can really get you to basically respond or action. Talking about action here. Those are the two things that can make you act. And then going into that non-compelling why or reasoning is like, if you don't have a strong enough why or big enough why, it's so easy for you to just give up or let go. Or on the other hand, if you have a very strong, compelling why, it can allow you to continue to move forward, right? So you're looking at those two and you're saying, okay, if I'm looking in the fact of saying, like, I never want to at one point in time, I wanted to go to the NFL. If I had a strong enough, compelling reason, that means that there was nothing that was going to stop me to get into the NFL, because my reasoning, my big why was, rather if it was taking care of my mother, or financial reasons, materialism. I don't think materialistic reasons are that big, but for other people, it can be. They could be someone that's never had anything, and having material possessions is something that's just like a huge thing for them. And that's a driver. That's something that can continue to push that person towards, what they want in life, or being ambitious to achieve those goals. So those are like really probably the three things that I think can stop someone from achieving their goals, or, allow them to pursue them.
So I want to dig into the first one of those, because I think it's something that we all deal with, but we don't know how to recognize what the root of it is. You said fear of. And so when I hear fear of, the first thing I think is fear of what? The reality is well, for me, the reality is when there is a material loss. If I lose this pen, that means I can't write with it anymore. But what's my fear? My fear is not losing the pen and not being able to write anymore. My fear would, in this particular instance or example, would be that I might have an idea or a concept that comes to me and not have the utensils that I need to write it down and document it so that I can remember it later to develop it further. So that's the root, is that I really want to be able to document things so that I can build content, and not having this one last pen in the world creates a fear. However, I think we both would agree that when you're operating from a place of fear, you don't typically make the best decisions. I always use the example of when I was younger, I had a fear that the boogeyman lived under my bed. I think it's what my parents taught me, so that I wouldn't get out of the bed in the middle of the night and come and knock on their door. So I would get in the bed, but I would turn off the light switch and run and jump into the bed. So it was it was an irrational fear, but it was real to me, because I was like, if I walk to this bed and get in, he's gonna grab me and I'm gonna be stuck under this bed for the rest of my life. So fear kind of makes us or drives us to make irrational decisions. So in your opinion, if you were to like really I guess digest or break down fear to its base element, what do you think it's fear of what that drives people to give up or to continue going forward?
Really, a lot of times I think fear, I think that fear creates a story. It creates a dialogue that's not true. And what I mean by that is, usually when you have that fear, you are creating all types of, assumptions, and all this is going to happen and that's going to happen next. I mean, it's like that fear will literally, you'll continue to feed it with your thoughts. But fear of, I think really it really goes down. And my wife says this term a lot, but she says your child self, right? Going back to your child self. and how real that is, and the fears that you might have had as a child. So yeah, we're not talking about, like the boogeyman, things of that sort, but we talk about certain experiences that you may have had when you were younger. Rather, if your family grew up in, some really hard financial situations, that is a fear that might be embedded or innate, something that's so deep inside of you that you don't even recognize it. So when it comes time when you want to be successful or you want to go forward and do certain things, that fear comes up because you go, oh my goodness, this is becoming something like, ooh, too much responsibility. Oh my goodness, what if I fail? What if I go back into, those financial conditions that I once was when I was a child, right? And thinking about, those type of situations, a lot of times I think the fears that we have, we're not necessarily aware of them. I think it's a lot of times it has to be things that are brought to the light. There's one thing that they say is, what's that one quote? You could probably paraphrase it better than I can, but it's not that we fear that we'll fail, but we fear of being successful, something on those lines, or that we're more powerful than what we know or believe. Those type of things. For me, that doesn't really resonate with me because I'm like, nah, I want to be successful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not afraid to be successful. You know what I mean? But it could be the things that come along with it. You can be afraid of. You say that, you know what? Hey, I may not be really good at accounting. So if I'm not good at accounting, man, that means if I become successful, I got to be really good at accounting. It's like, no, not really. You just leverage it, find somebody that's good at accounting and have them take care of it. You know what I mean? So, like again, we talk about that fear. It creates these irrational stories that you don't know that aren't true until you actually go through the process. I think does that answer your question?
No, it does. I mean, literally, as soon as you said the stories, it's fear of what? It's fear of the created story. So Brian said that, where did it go? It says, you tell yourself stories when fear is part of the equation. You start focusing on this make-believe world when fear is a part of the equation. So you're right. It's fear of what? Is fear of the created story that you're going to create, that things are more catastrophic or success is impossible. And so you create this story, and that fear causes you to make that decision whether you're going to give up or not. So you definitely answered that. There's actually a question here from Damian Rowe. He was on last week's Intersation. That's my brother. He says, question for Key. As a husband, father, and provider, was there ever a time when you had to ask for help? If so, did it hurt your ego enough to make you want to give up? Did it hurt you or improve you?
Man, that's a good question. Actually, it's something. I really have a great wife. So the thing is like, as a husband, you never want to disappoint, right? You always want to be the provider. You always want to be the one that's strong. You want to be the one, hey, I got this together. And actually, yeah, there was a moment where I was hesitant. I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen here. I'm like, oh my goodness, what? I need help, and I need to ask her, and I'm nervous, and I'm like, and it was something that, really, was my fault, and and dealing with business and so forth. But the thing was, is I went directly to her and said it and said, hey, this is a situation. And come to find out, the story that was in my head of that, she was gonna trip no, I mean, she was very understanding and actually helped the situation, as opposed to just being me, in my head and trying to figure out this whole thing. And no, two heads come together. I mean, two different perspectives, and was able to solve the situation. No problem. No problem. And it didn't hurt my ego. Actually, it felt like I have a team member right here with me that is going to be here through thick and thin. And that was that was actually a learning curve for me. That was something like, I grew up in a family where, you made a mistake, you got reprimanded immediately. Like, it was like, so you never wanted to make a mistake, and there's probably some other things there, like for previous relationships where it's like, oh, you do this, you do that person leave you, they gone, this and that. So you're in a marriage at this time, you thinking like, man, I need to have this together. And, what if this doesn't go right? Is she gonna leave me, this and this and that? And it's like, no, once you know that you have a great relationship, you understand that, and you're able to go to, your spouse and say, hey, this is the situation, and know that everything's going to be okay because you guys are a team. You're on the same path and moving forward. But yeah, great question, Damien. Great question.
Yeah, that's funny because it makes me think of Fast and Furious. I forget which one because there's so many of them where they were riding along. I think it's Tyrese is riding in the car and he's like, ejecto seat, hit that button, and oh boy, went out. You just assume that that's what's going to happen. Like you're riding in this car with somebody and you made a mistake and you got to turn to this person and tell them, hey, I made a mistake. And you just feel like they're just going to kick you right out of the car and keep going and leave you stranded at wherever it is you're at. And that's whether it's metaphorically in life where you're at or physically where you're at. So I think it goes back to that creative story, but it's great that you have a partner. I love Sarah. So it's great that you have a partner that is understanding and is appreciative that you're forthcoming, with the mistake that you've made and willing to partner with you to help rectify it. That goes a long, long way. The next question I want to ask you is, what in your experiences, what has been one of your greatest successes that you have achieved by having a never giving up mindset?
Ooh, there's two of them in particular, and I know them like the back of my hand because it's crazy. So I don't necessarily think of marriage as a success type of thing or like a huge accomplishment, but my marriage definitely. And secondly, our real estate business. And reason why I say our marriage is before I met Sarah, I literally gave up. I've been married before, been in, long-term relationships, and I was done. Mm-hmm. I was like, it's not for me. Nope, don't want to get married. I have my daughter. I'm going to focus on her, focus on my career, and keep it pushing. Done, right? But she came in at the nick of time because whoever it was, I think God like literally slapped me and was like, wake up, boy, she's right here. So with that, I mean, the marriage, and because of that, I literally grown as an individual. I mean, going from being able to accomplish the things that I've always wanted to accomplish because you have that person on your side that's there that can go with you in the same path, in the same direction. I mean, it was absolutely awesome. And a result of that was actually starting our own business together, starting our own real estate firm. And there was a moment where in real estate where we shifted gears. We were both at Coldwell Banker. And then from Coldwell Banker, we just started to start our own brokerage. And, shortly after, maybe about 2 years within that business, 2 or 3 years within the business, we kind of got in a situation where it was like, okay, things are shifting, things were changing. We're like, okay, Key, you got to really hustle or you got to go and get a full-time job. Like at that moment, I mean, it was like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, maybe 4 months from now. So what are you going to do? You got to really grind hard and really grow this business, or you can go work for the state. So at the beginning, I'm sitting there filling out applications for the state, trying to be, one of the, government advisors for the state, things of that sort. And I'm filling out applications and all types of stuff. And I remember talking to her father, and I sat down and spoke with him. He's a great man. His name is Jim Gonzalez, and sat down, talked to him, and he put things in perspective for me. He just kind of said, well, how are you feeling? Look, you can go and you can work for the state. That's not a problem. You can do that, or you can go and have your own business and you be the creator of how much you make. You determine that. You determine what you and your family can do. It just depends on how much you hustle. And I sat there and I literally told him, I said, listen, Pops, when I sit here and I fill out these applications, like I can't breathe. Like I had this, like, I could not, like, it felt like things were closing in on me. I was like claustrophobic, just thinking about working for somebody else where I had to do a 9 to 5. And I was like, I don't think I'm about that life at all. I mean, and it pressed really hard on me. And so because of that, I went ahead and hustled and grind. And next thing you know, that initial fear of thinking like, oh, what if you don't hustle good enough? What if you're not really grinding out there? What if you don't make enough income for your family? Like, now you have a family, now you're married. Like, I think Isaac was 1 year old at the time. So I'm like, I got a new son. I'm like, oh man, like, let me go with what's safe and secure and get this paycheck, you know? Like, but till this day, I'm so happy I made that decision. Like, I can't imagine me working for this. I mean, thinking about the position I would be in now in comparison to where we are now, I mean, it's bounds above where we would be at. So making that decision was definitely something, worthwhile.
All right, no, that's definitely a good share, man. It's interesting because you found yourself at a crossroads where you could have went left or right, and one of the intersations I did with Brandon, nobody for those who call him nobody, but I call him Brandon. He's my brother. He was saying how people were telling him you need to go and get this job and you need to go and get the security and you need to start climbing the corporate ladder, and he just really knew that that wasn't what he wanted to do, and that it was just sucking the joy out of his life going and working for Sarah Lee, who later in Sacramento went bankrupt. And you spend all this time thinking you're making the right decision to secure or to stabilize your family, and you find out that down 15 steps down the path that you chose, oh well, they could sweep that from underneath you just the same. So I guess the question becomes, in your never give up mindset, it becomes, do you want it to be reliant upon you, or do you want it to be reliant upon somebody else's dream? And if that dream they decide to give up on, then that leaves you hanging in the air trying to figure out your life. So
I ain't dry.
Definitely a good share. With that, because I mean, that would make you think, actually, man, we're actually already at 46 minutes in. So for those who have more questions, more comments that they want to put into the chat, please start putting those in. We got a lot more questions to go from me, but I'm liking the conversation. So we'll keep it going. Hopefully we'll be able to cut it when we get to the right spot. I think sometimes our failures help us to develop our never give up mentality. And I kind of want to backtrack to a spot where you said, you've been married before, and obviously that marriage didn't work out because you're now married now. Can you walk us through, and if it's too personal, please let me know, but can you walk us through from the ending portion of that first marriage, how you shift from, obviously, we were taught spiritually, marriage is forever, how you shifted away from having that never give up mentality on your marriage, shifted away from that, and then where you're at now and what you've learned from that previous failure that you're applying to your marriage today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that first marriage really was, we were young, 18, 19 years old. Marriage didn't last long. It was about 1 year. So the option really, to be honest with you, when the whole separation thing was even being thought of, she wanted to separate, I wasn't giving up. I was not giving up. It was not in me, and I literally took my vows very seriously. So I figured, I said, okay, there's got to be reasons why this is happening. So I went and got a different job that was paying more. At the time, because we were so young, we were actually staying with her parents. So that wasn't an ideal situation. You think about yourself as a husband, you come in, your authority of your family is stripped away, right? Because you don't have an authority over someone else's household, right? So in that, it was really a difficult situation. But I said, okay, well, maybe I need to get my own place. So I went and got my own apartment, got a car, I'm trying to do everything. I'm calling, I'm like, hey, I got this, I got that, come back over, let's make this thing work. I'm in my prayer closet. I feel like I'm doing anything and everything to try and make that marriage work, and then come to find out situations of her wanting to be with someone else and, being pregnant, all this other stuff. That's when it got to a certain point when I found out about it. I said, okay, there's a time when you have to give up, right? now your efforts are not going anywhere. You know, she's in love with somebody else. That is what it is. Okay, now it's over, right? So it ended right there, done, right? So in that, it was also a learning curve of, you were very young. Did you really understand what marriage meant, right? Even though I was doing everything I wanted, like saying like, I'm doing everything to make sure I'm keeping my vows. I understood that portion of it, but I really didn't understand what it meant to have a partnership, what it meant to be one with somebody else and continuing on that path together. Being the, you know, what they say, being her rib, right? Like literally giving that rib and coming together and being one together as a family. And as I got older and going through other relationships and start seeing, okay, these things are failing. Why are they failing? What is it that I'm doing wrong? Number one. Number two, what is it that I actually want in a relationship? Right. And being able to figure those things out. So those failures allow me to understand, okay, who is it that I'm looking for in a mate? Right. What type of woman, what type of family does that woman have? Which is something I literally didn't think of. I used to be the type of man that would say, hey, it doesn't matter if her family likes me or not. If I'm in love with her, it is what it is. Right. And I love her and it's just me and her. Right. And, you know, and now being in this marriage, I found out how important it is because I love her family dearly and they've accepted me like from the, like, we feel like we are like family from the beginning. Like it's just been such a natural movement, like of two families coming together. And now understanding, I'm like, that is very important. So as I, you know, raise my children, that is always going to be an important um, uh, standard that I think that everyone should have, you know, in that standpoint, because it just works better, it flows better, it feels better, right? So, you know, without that, I mean, I wouldn't have understand any of that situation, right? And then getting into the relationship with Sarah, I was able to know, you know, what values were real and which were fake, right? You know, you look at certain things, you go, no, you want somebody that has a good head on their shoulders, you know, that somebody that, you know, that is ambitious, independent, and self-assured, right? You know, and she had all of that plus, you know, and it made the decision very, very easy after having all those previous failures.
All right. I think you touched on something really important, and it was one of my questions, but you've already answered it. Is, you know, I was going to ask you at what point does never giving up become denial? But really, you articulated it very well in that example of, you know, hey, this person's no longer in love with me, so my pursuit of them is no longer in my best interest, or in the words of Damian Rowe from his Intersation, I'm no longer preserving myself. So I can get an apartment, I can get a mansion, I can get a Bentley, I can get a Honda Civic. None of those things are going to win back the attention of somebody who's already gone from the relationship and has already checked out. So I think that's very important, because I've myself have had the other experience where the person was clear as day, I'm moving on, I'm not interested, and I went into self-sacrifice instead of self-preservation. And in going into that, I ended up costing myself a lot of havoc and grief and chaos in my own life, that I had to really work to overcome and get out of. And I think part of that was denial. Later on, somebody asked me, I think sometimes we get into denial, especially getting married very young, we get into denial into what it is that we want. And somebody asked me a very long time ago, they said, well, you know, if you were to give me one piece of advice as a man to a young man, what would that be? And I would say my advice is to never lie to yourself, because when you start lying to yourself, that is the beginnings of denial. And you'll find yourself in relationships with people that you really don't even want to be with. So that's really important. I think that you shared that, getting out of that, not being willing to go into that denial state, and just accepting the experience for what it is and being willing to let it go. I have a couple more questions I want to ask you. I don't see anybody. There's been no new questions posted in the chat, so I'm going to continue with my questions. Is for you, how do you best instill, especially since you have 3 children, how do you best instill the mindset of never giving up to whether it be your children or others that look up to you or people that you encounter in your day-to-day life?
Really, I go back to that why.
Hmm.
What is the why? I mean, that's the only way I think that you can try to instill that into someone, that mindset, because other than that, I mean, you don't know how a person thinks, right? So one thing that I try to do with my oldest daughter, is I say, what is it that you want? What is it that you most desire, right? And I said, make those goals and then attach an emotional reason why you need those goals to be completed. Now, regardless if that depending on whatever those answers are, she can basically pinpoint and say, is that really something that's very compelling to me? Is that something that's going to drive me and make me move every day to strive towards those goals? Or is it not? I can't assess that for her, right? So it has to be something that really is compelling for her. And I mention that for anyone that says, how do I continue to keep pushing forward? And one example, it's a guy that I listen to, named Ed Milet, really awesome guy. Um, One of those motivational speakers, multimillionaire type of guy, entrepreneur. And one thing that he stated, that he was at a position in his life where he was very unhealthy. I guess at the young age of 35, the doctors told him he had a heart of a 75-year-old.
Oh,
And
wow.
that he had to make some very, very, very um, uh, life changes, meaning diet and working out, things of that sort. And he basically was giving up. He was like, I got to do all of this. No, I'm not going to do it. But that doctor sat him aside and said, listen, tell me about yourself. And I guess he told me, yeah, I have a daughter, I'm married, all this other stuff. And that doctor looked him in the eyes and told him, if you do not take care of yourself, if you do not make a drastic change, your daughter is going to get walked down the aisle by another man.
Wow.
And your wife is going to be with somebody else that she loves. And that man is going to be the one that walks your daughter down the aisle. That right there, him no understanding that he was like officially like going to die very soon if he didn't change. And the fact that vision, that emotional attachment of another man walking your daughter down the aisle,
Right. Woo.
man, I mean, that if you talk about a why, right? That is a big why. I mean, you can really, and he said even to this day, I mean, I think he's now in his 50s now, but even to his day, he thinks back on that.
Mm.
And that still is a driving force for him to this day. So if you have a big enough why, I don't think that there's never a moment when it's no longer a big why, right? I think that it's always going to be something that is attached to you and it's something that's that driving force for you. And I think the biggest problem, or I wouldn't say problem, but necessarily the biggest issue when it comes to that is people just don't know what their why is.
Mm. So, and then in your opinion, how do you seek that out? How do you find that why that resonates? Because I've actually had conversations with people and they're like, I don't know what my why is. I don't know what I'm passionate about. Like, I'm passionate about inspirational speaking, so this is why I do this every week.
Mhm.
But in your opinion, how do people begin to get in touch with that why? And I want to kind of draw your attention. There was a comment made where it said, when the why or when the reasoning or the why is motivated by love, you can achieve or find the answers or resources to achieve. Um, so, in your opinion, how do you connect with that why of love instead of the why of fear?
Man, it's hard. Honestly, I don't think I have an absolute answer for that. But what I would do personally is I would dig into the things that I mostly love and that I'm very passionate about. And at that same time, figuring out how do I make that compelling enough for me to keep going. And I think another gentleman that speaks about this, Gary Vee, he talks about that death is actually a huge motivating factor. If you telling yourself, yeah, I'm going to die, in 5 years or 10 years, or the fact is that everyone will die. Like everyone goes through the circle of life. So
Right.
what is it? What are you going to leave behind? What's going to happen? Because tomorrow is never promised for anyone, right? So considering that, is like, is that something that's deep enough for you to make you want to move and act? And, you know, for me, death doesn't really work, but the love of my family does. My family is my absolute driving force. So anything that and everything that I do, I'm thinking about my family, from my wife to my kids to my mother, everyone that's in my immediate family, they resonate with me more than anything else. And that's always been, you know, my driving force, at least since I became a little more self-aware. There was times when, you know, you're just going about life, right? But once you become self-aware about who you are as a person, I think that might allow you to channel into what your big why and what your reasonings are for doing things. Some people have a big heart for service. So I know a guy that literally just wants to serve and give back to the community. That's everything and all that he wants to do, even to the point where it's a fault that he does not get money. He doesn't make any income off of it. He just wants to give and give. But if he had an income for it, he can probably give more, which is one thing that he's trying to channel into right now, is that understanding that the income or being an entrepreneur, rather if it's in philanthropy and whatnot, but going forward in that, in understanding that he can serve more, you know, by doing so. So there are some definitely different ways of figuring it out, but I think, you know, attaching it with self-awareness can definitely help you find out what it is that you love and possibly give you that big reason why.
Yeah, I agree with you. The self-awareness point, I I think it took place somewhere for me, maybe like 17, 18 years old, where I really started like reading self-help books and, you know, developing the leader within, the 7 habits of effective people, highly effective people. Started really looking at information from a different perspective, because I used to hate to read. I was not the kid who would raise his hand to read in class. That just wasn't me. But that self-reflection for me is really what allowed me to have that self-awareness and understand what are the things that Billy likes, what are the things Billy doesn't like. And so you'll hear me say probably on 100 videos, I'm really big on Sean's concept of what do I want to give. And it's because of my awareness and being in tune with who I am and what my passions are and what my character is and who I want to be, that I'm really able to have some pretty deep, I'm not mentally crazy, but some pretty deep conversations with myself and say, man, that really resonates with me. And really that's how I think you and I were talking about how Intersations was birthed. You and I were a part of the mastermind meetings,
Right,
and
right.
we were having conversations before the mastermind
Yeah,
meetings.
we were. Yeah.
So we've had tons of conversations that have all kind of guided the compass to this particular point. And I'm sure that it will continue to guide the compass will continue to guide beyond this point. But this is how these things take place or come into, again, this is how these things are manifest, is by having that compass and having that passion and having those conversations to say, is that what I'm really passionate about? And then on the other side, being willing to say, you know, that doesn't do it for me anymore. This is not what drives me anymore. This is not what makes me happy. This is not what pushes me towards what I believe to be greatness for myself. And it's not greatness in the sense of famous and the limelight and all these different things, but greatness is as far as being the best possible maximum you that you can be. So I think that's really great. I don't have any more questions. The only question I want to ask you at this point, because I want to start closing, we're actually at an hour and 5 minutes right now, so I don't want to take people too far into overtime. Damien says another good book is Falling Forward. So I'll have to add that to my list on audible.com. So I can,
Yep, audible.com. If you don't got it, get it.
yeah, I can't read everything, but I can listen.
Yeah.
So let me write that. Falling Forward. Oh, I'm sorry, it says Failing Forward, not Falling Forward. Failing Forward. But it's definitely been a good conversation. And I think there's been some things that you've shared. Number one, about your story. Thank you for being so transparent with your stories and your experiences. But number two, just as far as overall, I think this is really just the surface of this particular topic. Yes, failing forward, I got it. Of this particular topic. So if you could, because we're getting ready to wrap up a little bit, if you could share from this particular conversation, if there were 2 or 3 or 4 things that you want the people who are watching either live or on the replay to take with them tonight about never giving up in that mindset, what would those things be that you would want them to take with them?
Well, number one, I would say that, don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid to dream big. And what I mean by that is whatever passions and love that you actually have in life, don't be afraid to move forward with it. Like I said before, fear is I think it's a deep emotion, and I think it's a stifling one. It stop you from doing the things that you want to do. And, just like Damien stated earlier, fear, false evidence appearing real. And I couldn't agree with that anymore. So definitely, if there's something that you actually striving for, something that you really want to do, but you've always felt that fear to get things started, I say go ahead, get started today. Number two, going into that reason why. If you can figure out what that why is, find out that why. I think that would be something that will always motivate you to act towards your goal. I can't tell you what that why is, but it's definitely something that I think that you should take some time out and really, try to, figure out, what your purpose is and the reasons of going about it. Third, love. I think that love is the other emotion to definitely move you forward in life. Instead of using fear, use love. And I think love will get you there. Adding love adds onto that passion, right? I think Moses he just stated, your passion ought to scare you sometimes, and that's absolutely true.
Right.
Being scared is totally different than fear.
Right.
It's totally different. But that's feeling that nervousness, like, what's to happen if I accomplish this, and you feel that that nervousness in your gut. That's actually a good feeling. Again, going back, try not to try to have fear in any goals that you're pursuing in life. Definitely go for them and get rid of that fear. Find out your big reasons why, whether that's being self-aware to figuring that out. And thirdly, love. Love is the emotion that you can definitely use to catapult you to accomplishing your goals.
I like that. It's funny, that big why, man. I've been on stage since I was in 2nd grade, and I would always, right before I go out to perform or whatever it be, get like these butterflies, and I'd be all nervous about things happening. And even to date, like even before I go live on an Intersation, I still get those butterflies. But it's to the point now where I'm like, my why is so big. If you want to affect the world or inspire millions of people, you can't let the butterflies of, oh, they're going to judge me, or, oh, they're going to say these bad things about me, oh, they may not like the content. You can't let those things stop you. You have to be able to move forward in spite of. And so it's really about loving what you do and loving the why. I love that I get to every week get on YouTube and change, even if it's only 5 people's lives. I believe in echo. So even if it echoes with one person, then it echoes to another. So there's people I'll never meet that I probably have the opportunity of helping to speak into their lives, and you'll never meet that you'll have the opportunity of speaking into their lives. So I like those 3 points: just removing the fear, the big why, and love. Love will move you forward. So with that, with the Intersations, I always want to share. So what I call tools for the first row. So the reason why this channel is called First Row is it's, number one, it's a play on my last name. My last name is Rowe. But when I was younger, I was taught that the people who sit on the first row, they make the most money and they get the most information. They get that because there is no distraction between the first row and the person speaking to the audience. So that's why I created the first row, and I'm using that particular name because all of you are live on the first row, sitting on the first row, getting this information, hopefully with minimal distractions in your environment. But even if there are, you're still welcome to come back and catch the replay. So with that, I want to share a couple of the things that when I started creating this content, the tools that came to me when it came to having the mindset of never giving up. And some of this will actually be because Keyvon and I think similarly. We didn't discuss what the tools would be, but we just think similarly, that some of this may be kind of overlap. And so the first tool that I came up with was choose the right battles. And this really resonated with me personally, but it also, I heard it when you were sharing your story about your first marriage, Keyvon. Choosing the right battles will keep you from being in a place where you feel like you need to give up. Where, again, going back to my first marriage, I told myself that, oh, this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. This is what I want. This is this, this is this. And then actually in the midst, before I made that leap, I had a moment of maybe I don't want this. And then I said, no, I'm not a quitter and I don't give up. And I went forward anyway. And in choosing that battle to go forward, it caused a lot of chaos and turmoil in my life that was unnecessary. Had I had really chosen the right battle for me to fight would have been, no, Billy, you know yourself. And you know that this is not particularly the type of person that you see yourself with for the rest of your life. And had I chose that battle, maybe it would have been painful. Maybe it would have been a little ugly in the beginning because, you know, you were supposed to get married and you didn't. Maybe there would have been some embarrassment. And maybe that was my driving factor to keep pushing forward. But however, I would have chosen the right battle and probably ended up with a couple of different outcomes in life overall. So the first thing is choosing the right battle, and don't recklessly apply determination. Some things in life are not worth being determined to see them through to the end. If I'm driving on a bridge and I see the bridge starts to collapse at the road in the distance, I don't need to continue to drive towards that bridge.
No, I never give up. I'm never giving up. I'm going.
No. And roll your window down because we're about to go in the water.
Right. God is with us.
So right. Yeah. Turn around. So I don't know why you still going that way.
Right.
So, just some things we don't need to apply our determination to. And that's okay. It's in that self-reflection will give you the ability to see what those things are. The second tool was very similar to Keyvon's, is the why. The why must be greater than the work. A lot of people, you know, even for myself, you know, I want to be a millionaire. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I got to be honest, in the beginning of my life and the opportunities that were presented, I wasn't willing to do the work. And so obviously the why of being a millionaire wasn't big enough. However, the why of inspiring people for me is a huge responsibility and a very big driver for me. So it's something that will allow me to wake up, have an idea in the middle of the night, reach over and put it on my phone and text myself that idea so that when I wake up in the morning, I have that idea and I can expand upon it. That is why the why must be bigger than the work. So that's the second tool. The third tool is reflect on failures. And I didn't want to just say reflect on, you know, successes and failures. Specifically, it's reflection on failures. Now, don't get the reflection on failures confused with moping and, you know, sulking in your failures and, oh, I'll never get it right and I'll never do this, I'll never do that. It's not that. It's a matter of reflecting on what didn't work so that you can cross that off the list, or take what you can take from that failure to apply it to the second go round. You'll see this in experimentation. I was actually just watching the news a little bit before I jumped on the Intersation, and they were talking about some type of cancer medicine that they've applied that is like it works at like a genetic level or with genetics in order to attack certain types of cancer. And so if you focus on your failures and your moping, then you're like, oh man, that didn't work, and you quit and you give up. That's when you give up. But if you focus on your failures, you say, okay, so here's what I did. this didn't work, but we've seen a little bit of success here. Let's take that little bit of success that we did see and expand upon that. And you start your new thing and you start your new thing. So who knows, they could have been working on this cancer cure, this particular cancer cure for 10 years, 20 years. And if they would have given up on their first failure, trust me, we wouldn't be hearing about it today. But being able to understand the failure and why something didn't work, I'm going to come back to that, but why something didn't work allows you to be able to apply the things that do work into your next rendition of it. That is not to be confused with when a relationship doesn't work, where, I mean, even I was caught up in this particular cycle myself, where it was like the relationship didn't work. Why didn't it work? I need an answer or a response from you about why I failed as a husband, why this marriage failed. And I'm not talking about that type of failure, because you can easily go within yourself and hypothesize some things that you felt like you could have done better. And those are things that, regardless if anybody ever gives you the answer to why they left or why you left or why it didn't work, you can work on and grow and expand upon in your own self. So that is the third thing, is reflect on failures. The fourth thing is use 3 engines. And so the reason why I say use 3 engines is because there's 3 different things that happen. There is your past engine, the things that have already happened, which are your experiences that are going to help you, learn and move forward in life. There's your present engine, which is handling everything that's happening right now in this moment and this entire day. And then there's your future engine, which is a strategy to resolve your future conflicts, future obstacles and issues that may come up. So I recommend you choose to use 3 engines. Use one that you dedicate some time to reflecting on the past, because you can look at your past and see what things made you happy, what things made you sad, what things you could have done without. I started finding that video games, though I enjoy playing them, they don't make me as happy as I used to. So if I'm just living based on the past engine, where when I was a kid and when I was in my 20s, where video games were life, and we had Halo parties at my house and all that stuff. If I'm living in just that past engine, then I'm now playing video games at 37 way more than I really want to. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't even remember the last time I turned my Xbox on to play a video game, and that's kind of sad. But I got other things that I'd rather do that actually fulfill me more than playing somebody else's dream that was brought to life electronically. That present engine is what drives me to wake up in the morning, what drives me to go to work, so that I have the resources that I need to have lights on and to have an internet connection and to be able to reach the world. Like, those are the things that drive me in my present engine. And then that future engine is that foresight to be able to see what's coming down the pipeline and apply strategy to it, not apply all my attention to it, but apply strategy to it, so that I'm moving through things methodically, moving through things methodically, so that I'm not just completely blindsided as the future comes. It's not like I'm running chaotically without any type of sense of direction. So I recommend use 3 engines. That's the 4th tool. And then the 5th and final tool that I have is own it and avoid blaming others. When I think of blaming others, I always think of, I think it's Inspector Gadget with Dr. Claw, where every single episode it was, I'll get you next time, or you'll pay for this gadget. And it was like, all the bad plans that you put together is Inspector Goofy Gadget's fault. Like, come on, son, you got to have a better plan than that. Right, or, the Scooby-Doo mysteries, I would have got away for it if it wasn't for these pesky kids.
Right.
I don't know how many people have said that by now, but maybe y'all should start taking into account the kids in your plan, so that they don't unmask you at the end of the show. So it's owning it and understanding the difference between identification of adversities versus blame, because there are some legitimate things that can come up in life that are not excuses. They are situations that just come up. They're issues, they're obstacles. Yeah, and so those can be valid. But when you're looking at those valid obstacles or valid issues, you have to still make that choice on whether you're going to own the research necessary, the education necessary, the time, the whatever it may be that's necessary to overcome it. You got to own that. And if it's like, hey, tonight when you're tired and it may not be the best time for you to absorb information, it's best for you to go to sleep right now. But then you got to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and read some of this book because you need the information. That's owning it. You can't blame, I don't have any time. I don't have any time. Oh, I'm always so busy. I don't have any time. A lot of times I hear people say, I don't have the money to do whatever. And it's like, well, I know you got some money at some point. I know you have a place to stay, so you paid for those bills. And what happened to the rest of the money? And when you start walking them through the rest of their money, they're like, oh, yeah, well, you know, my job is notorious. Oh, food trucks was here on Wednesday and Thursday, so I got me a plate, and then I got dinner because I didn't want to cook that night either.
Right.
You know, the game was on, and so I went to Buffalo Wild Wings and watched it, or whatever it may be. All these little things that are sucking away from your resources, and so really you're blaming it on time when really the legitimate issue is that you're not fiduciarily responsible with your income, and you need to get better and lock that down, because that's something that you can actually strategize to fix. You can't strategize to fix time, because time is going to be what it is, 24 hours in a day, based on what we've all agreed upon. So those are the 5 tools that I came up with for the first row. Again, just to briefly recap, is choose the right battles. The why must be greater than the work. Reflect on failures. Use 3 engines, and then own it and avoid blaming others. So with that, I want to just take you, Moses, not red herring. I just want to thank you, Key, for coming on tonight. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom. I appreciate for all the viewers who stuck with us into overtime just to get the rest of this message. Definitely appreciate you guys rocking with us tonight. One of the things I do want to share is that I have had a conversation with my brother Keyvron here about next year's plans to actually add another layer of content to the first row. And since Keyvron is, number one, he's been my real estate agent, but number 2, he has also done real estate for other people that I know and that I have referred to him. He is actually going to start doing a series, bi-weekly series we'll start off with on first row, and it's going to be called Keeping It Real Estate. So it's a series that I definitely recommend you guys jump on. I just want to put it in your ear for right now that it's going to start in 2019. But it's a series that I think that would be very helpful, because home ownership is typically something that a lot of us have been interested in, and maybe we don't know even the path to get there. And Key is a very knowledgeable real estate agent. And for me to trust him with the first row brand is a big thing, just like I trust you, Cousin Mo, and everybody that I bring on the Intersations. But it's a very big thing to trust somebody with your brand in order to come out and let them produce content on your channel. So I want to put that out there for the people, Keith. If you haven't shared it with them, I'm busting you out right now. You told me to be your accountability partner. So, man, don't not show up.
Exactly. Don't not show up. No, bro, I appreciate the plug, man. Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on here, man. I appreciate it. I mean, you know, I've loved our conversations since we've had them since the beginning, you know, and so you know, being on this platform is great, and I definitely look forward to keeping it real estate on the first row. That's going to be an awesome thing, and doing it bi-weekly, and hopefully getting to something where it's, you know, more frequent than, you know, twice a month. But, you know, definitely looking forward to that. And again, I appreciate everyone that showed up. Thank you for all the support, all the love, all the questions. Damien has some really good questions. I think Antoine has some great questions as well. Lamont, thanks for showing up. Sophia, Moses, everybody, man. Appreciate you guys. And yeah, man, until next time.
All right. Well, other than that, the next live show on the first row will be tomorrow. That's Wednesday. So you know what that means. It's Wednesday. Word. That's at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and that topic will be apologize. Now, I'll let your own conscience kind of help you work out what you think that's going to be about. I know mine helped me. So other than that, I definitely, again, appreciate you, Keith, for being on tonight. I appreciate you guys in the live audience for participating and being involved and engaged in the chat. As always, if you like this video, please share it. If you share this video, please like it. If you have not done so already, please go to the First Row YouTube channel and click subscribe, and make sure you click the bell so that you can be notified when the First Row comes on live. Currently, we have content on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but who knows? You know, we might pop up every once in a while and be unscheduled, what do they call it? You're interrupting your regularly scheduled program. So again, I thank you guys for tuning in tonight. So until the next time, thank you for sitting on the first row. One love, peace, and God bless.